You're watching the Pennsylvania Roller Coaster Club on YouTube.
Hello. How's everybody doing today? And thank you for stopping back in for the fourth episode of the Park After Dark podcast. Joined as always by my good buddy up in the right, Mr. Jake Coasters, and joined today by our newfound friend and an old friend of Jake's, Mr. Coaster Juice. Coaster Juice, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Jake, how was the weekend, buddy?
It was good. It was a balmy 70-something degrees, approaching 80. So it's very good here in Florida. We're going to get very cold, though, this week. It's going to drop down to like the 50s. So we're going to be in our multiple layers, and shivering.
Yeah, it was unseasonably warm here today. It was unseasonably warm here today. It was 49 degrees. And last week, there were 3 days where our high did not get out of the 20s. So it has been a pretty cold winter here in Pittsburgh. As I had mentioned to both of you guys through text earlier today, very much looking forward to getting down to South Florida in January. I don't know how many more of these winters I can do up here. Once a snowbird, always a snowbird. I think that Florida is calling me back home over the next, I would say, 5 years. I figure as soon as Allie graduates high school and I have no reason to be here anymore, Daddy's gone, and we're going to start telling her about all the wonderful facilities either at UCF or at USF. And she can make the decision where she wants to go to college. But I don't think it's going to be hard to sell an 18-year-old girl on, hey, do you want to move to Florida? So pretty easy pitch from Dad, I think. But
if you need help,
Juice,
let me
any
know.
kids? Oh, I definitely will. Juice, do you have any kids?
I do not. No, actually, I'm
You
getting
do-
married in March. So
Awesome. Now, did you go through the psychiatric evaluation first before agreeing to get married in today's day and age? More importantly,
Yeah,
I guess I'm concerned with
I've
her,
done some pretty
Juice.
big things.
Did she go through the psychiatric evaluation for agreeing to marry you in 2024?
Yes.
That is important. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they ask you something like that before you say "I do" now. Anyway, isn't that accurate in Florida too? I would think. I know as an ordained minister here in Pennsylvania, I have to verify with people that they are not drunk, that they have not consumed, illegal or foreign substances that could alter their judgment or their ability to make a sound judgment decision. So yeah, they take that pretty serious here. I'm not too sure if it's the same way everywhere else. I know when I got married in Las Vegas years ago, this would be my second failed marriage. There are several of them. That tends to happen when you are a ridiculous human being with ridiculous human being hobbies. Like, back in the day, using drugs and riding roller coasters. It seemed like a great idea when we were younger, I tell you. Now just the roller coasters, at least. But Jake, we've had a pretty interesting news week. There are CEOs getting popped. There are unbelievable Super Mario Brother references that have just been popping up all over the internet all week. And the other thing that I've been seeing all week is people telling all the other coaster enthusiasts where they're going to go new for next year. Seems to be the big topic of conversation is, what park are you going to go to that you are most looking forward to in 2025? I've seen at least 24 posts from different enthusiasts pretty much asking the exact same question. So I'm going to turn that question over to you guys first. Is there anywhere new that you're going to get to go next year in 2025 that has you super excited? Juice, you first, buddy.
Yeah, I currently am looking at maybe going to Dollywood. So there's a potential for that. There are other options, but I think that one's a pretty secure option that we're probably going to go to Dollywood. So
I think that's a good call. One you probably won't be very disappointed in. Jake, how about you, man?
Yeah, I think we are also going to Dollywood because there is a big car show there, and not at Dollywood, but in Pigeon Forge. So one of the biggest car shows in the world, or something like that. There's cars there. But we're gonna go there and probably stop by Dollywood. Obviously, Cedar Point is on my radar. You mentioned the news this week. Obviously, Top Thrill 2 has been spotted testing by a couple of
It
people.
has.
So yeah, it's looking like, if I have confirmation through the winter that Top Thrill 2 is reliably testing, then Cedar Point is definitely on my list for 2025 for sure.
Okay, very good. The Cedar Point thing is interesting to me because what do you think the odds are that they're successfully going to be able to have Siren's Curse open for opening day and also have Top Thrill 2 resolved for opening day?
I think Top Thrill 2 will run semi-reliably this season. I think Siren's Curse, it should be fine with the exception of, I think you'll have both kind of running 70, 80%. Let me rephrase, 60, 70% uptime for the majority of the season. I don't see why not, especially if there's no issues with the Top Thrill 2 trains this time around. Really, the whole time it was open, the 7 days, it really didn't go down a whole lot. So I think if they resolve the train issue, it should be running pretty fine. With Siren's Curse, you're obviously talking about just the tilt track mechanism. The rest of it's kind of ran by gravity. So I don't really see a huge problematic issue with Siren's Curse. So I'm a bit optimistic. I think they'll have a good season. It seemed like.
Do you think they'll open? Do you think they'll open with the park?
I think Siren's Curse kind of has to. I think that, somebody might burn down the park.
In fairness, I think all of us would have agreed the Top Thrill 2 kind of had to run too, but we didn't get that. So
we did for.
yeah, I mean, and it was pretty glorious for that week.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely a fun ride. Something that I'm looking forward to riding again. Definitely.
Yeah, I was looking. Obviously, like Siren's Curse is a pretty cool thing that's coming, but really just the downright audacity and also just the technical components of Top Thrill 2 running at all so I'm a bit more forgiving with like Top Thrill Dragster, Top Thrill 2, the major strata coasters, because just the general forces that is required on that's pushed on those trains. I mean, for me, I when it went down, I was like, well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't shock me. But when it was running. So I could definitely see a situation where Top Thrill 2 is up and running. Siren's Curse might not be ready yet, but one of them has to kind of be ready for the season, in my opinion.
You would think.
Yeah, I definitely don't think they want to go there's been a lot of parks have had problems this year. I don't think they want to continue that next year at all.
No. And I do think they got Siren's Curse there to ensure that there is something
There's
for
something,
this season.
right? There's something to be ready.
Right. And
Yeah, it's funny that we're kind of talking Siren's Curse, and it's a good lead in because the premise of today's show, and really what I want to talk about and try to get a little conversation and opinion, and it'll be nice because we're going to have some perception feedback from maybe somebody who hasn't been to every park on this list, but also some additional feedback from somebody else that has. So this should be a good little panel for tonight's conversation. So Jake, I want to talk about my 2024, my personal list that I put out every year of my top 10 parks in America. And when I look at these parks, I don't just evaluate them on roller coasters, as the name of the channel might lead you to believe. There are several things that, as enthusiasts, we probably have come to, I don't want to say expect, but expect from a company that is going to take the kind of dollars that these places do from season pass holders. So, what are some of those things that you personally look at when you evaluate a park?
Well, so for me, a big part of a good park, that's a loaded question because so for me, I separate out theme parks and amusement parks. I'm more preferential to theme parks that has a totality of experience. So for instance, from parking lot to the end of the day, there's one cohesive experience. There's one cohesive theme and idea that's kind of being explored throughout the day. And really, I think a lot of that has to do with growing up at like Disney and Universal and Busch Gardens and SeaWorld, where that kind of was the thing. The park that I think is doing that really well right now is like a Dollywood. I think, and we've talked about Dollywood before, but I think pretty highly of Dollywood. But also, in my opinion, of like cohesive experience, I think Islands of Adventure is what I look for in if I'm talking about like the perfect park, in my opinion, and it has been since 1999. Islands of Adventure is that park for me personally. But it's got, I mean, if you look at it, it's got dinosaurs, Harry Potter, and Spider-Man. So like, of course, It's my favorite theme park ever. But in terms of like cohesive experience, you know, all day you're exploring, you know, stories written come to life. And that's kind of the whole concept there. But even SeaWorld and Busch Gardens used to be really good at that total experience sort of thing. So that's what I look for. I'm not like a credits guy. You know, there are coasters that I have on my list. But if you can give me like a real cohesive experience and vibe all day, I'm more likely to like your park. Knott's Berry Farm, Silver Dollar City, Dollywood, you know, obviously the Florida parks, like those all do really well at that, I think.
Okay. And Juice, how about you? What do you look for in a park? Because I got to be honest, mine are very clear cut and incredibly measurable because I come from the world of finance. I like math. I like numbers. I like things that I can tell you, yes, this is, and yes, this is not. And how do I know? Because this number is bigger than that one. So it's there. To me, it is a very clear cut method for, is a park enjoyable? Do they provide a good return on investment? I grew up in an era of Kennywood. So My first time at Disney World, let me take that back. My first time stepping foot in a theme park, I was 17 years old. My first time on a roller coaster in a theme park, I was 4. So for that gap of time in my life, I only knew an amusement park. So, you know, I don't maybe have the same desire or need for a cohesive themed experience that Jake would. And probably I would think that Jake may even be a little bored at an Indiana Beach or a Kennywood type park because it is more just about rides and games than it is about, providing anything that's immersive, unless you're a Steelers fan. Then it's immersive. But Juice, go ahead. What kind of things do you look for?
I think I would echo some of Jake's points with how I want to have like a complete immersive experience. Some things that I've kind of noticed that can be a bit of a hiccup are like I think that sometimes it can be really hard to find your way around a park. Like I even noticed this at Islands of Adventure. Um, you know, people that are going to Universal, they know you should use the app. They should use the map on the app to find things. But like I was trying to walk around the park, and I noticed that there wasn't a whole lot of signage on where things are in the park, or at least I missed it. I noticed that. I noticed like sometimes you go to a park and like finding food options isn't the easiest thing. So places where I can do things seamlessly really help you be immersed because then you're not worried because you're not supposed to be worried at a theme park. You're there to enjoy your day, not stress out about, oh, how am I going to feed somebody who has X need? So things like that.
Yeah, that I think that is really important that we are at a park to have fun and not to have to worry. That is the primary reason that I will not attend a Disney property because there is no part of that experience in 2024 or for the last, I would say, 5 years. I haven't stepped foot on a Disney property. I have not watched a Disney movie. I have not given the Disney Corporation one penny of my money since probably 2018, 2019. Whenever they stopped caring about the people that made them what they are, which is the guest, when they sold out the guest for corporate greed to an unnecessarily sickening level, that was the end for me. The idea of a park like a Disney is to provide that special experience, but also to make it accessible. And when you remove that accessibility, whenever you tell someone that their child doesn't get to, they don't deserve that experience. I mean, guys, that is a hard one for me to swallow because I have seen, I've seen the families that can't afford to go to Disney. And years ago, it may have been 10%. Now it's 80% of families that can't afford to go to Disney because the families that live in Florida, I mean, it's pretty easy to afford Disney because all you have to do is get in the car and come up with the money for, in-state admission for a day. But if you're a mom and dad who aren't making 6 figures and you live outside of the state of Florida and it requires air travel, hotel accommodations, the whole 9 yards, it is hang on, guys. I'm going to have to pause for a second and come back on. My dogs just came down. Apparently, they need to use the bathroom. Give me just a minute. The point that I had been trying to make previously was the Disney parks should be more accessible to more families They have made it so expensive for just the bare basics to get you in the park and the new reservation process. And they just, like, I've never seen someone so smug to overcharge me ever. Like, these guys have balls of steel to insult my intelligence to tell me what they think they're worth. Because and I'm being very honest and fair. There are at least 50 other theme parks or amusement parks in America that I would rather go to than any of the Disney parks. At least 50, including Fun Spot Atlanta in Georgia that only has really one ride. Because that one ride is phenomenal. It's staffed. I can re-ride it 60 times in one day if I choose. Whereas in that one day, I may get to ride my favorite ride at Disney 3 times if I'm lucky. And, you know, then you start talking about cost difference and things like that. So what are those criteria that I typically evaluate by? Well, first is going to be the cost and the value. Am I getting my money's worth, comparatively speaking, to what other people in the same industry offer? So that's number one. Number two, is the park clean? Number three, is the park appropriately staffed? And that is a big one because coming back outside of COVID, obviously, we have had staffing issues in one reason or another, or companies claiming staffing issues and them just not wanting to pay people to be there, because there is a difference there too. And yes, I'm talking to you, Kings Island. Next would be the ride operations and the ride maintenance. Are they taking care of what they have from the maintenance front? And do you have a well-trained crew that is proficient at moving guests along? Because we know that that is a huge, huge part of guest experience, at least on company surveys. And finally, and the last thing that I worry about is going to be the actual ride lineup. But still very important, you know, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not as important as those other things. And of course, there are some small little things that can boost a park up, in my opinion, like a smoking section. Again, don't insult my intelligence as a consumer. If you mean to tell me that you can't come up with 34 square feet for me and 19 of your other paying customers to be able to smoke 200 yards recessed off the walkway from any other customer, if you want me to believe that, you are trying to sell the wrong guy. So pretty much what you're telling me is my money doesn't spend as greenly as a non-smoker. To which, to you, I would say, then I'm not going to come back. Because, yeah, you know, you can't push this all-inclusive attitude and then tell people, oh, no, you're a smoker, you're the problem. I'm not down with that. If it were an indoor park, yeah, of course. Like, who's going to think that they can smoke a cigarette in an indoor park and bother all these wonderful people that want to save their lungs? But again, when you're outside, and there are so many great parks, which we're going to talk about on this list, that do it well and do it clean without, you know, affecting their other guests in the park. I think it's kind of bush league that some parks don't have that, to be honest. And the last area that they can get some real big extra credit is the parking situation and the customer service. If you have a good parking setup, that can be a deal breaker, because not everybody wants to rent a locker. Not everybody wants to bring 55 things into the park. People like being able to go back out to their car, especially if there are not a lot of areas in the park. Now, if I'm closer to my car at the front gate, than I am to the smoking area that's at the rear of the park. I would much rather just walk out to my car and sit in the air conditioning for 3 or 4 minutes while I have a cigarette. So those are little things that can make a big difference for me. That being said, I want to go to the number 10 park on the countdown, which is going to be King's Dominion for 2024. And this is one of only 2 Six Flags parks to make this list,
That's weird.
which I think is going to
Six
surprise some people.
Flags. I'm so used to calling it Cedar Fair, man. Still not used to that.
They've got a lot of work to do to make sure that
I
the
know.
reputation does not come with that name, because,
Yeah, that is weird to hear.
and that is why I think that number 10 King's Dominion is a great park to start at, Juice. From what you just said, they have a lot of work to do. I actually don't think that they have a lot of work to do, but I don't think they have a lot of thinking to do. This recipe is very, very simple. Go to King's Dominion, copy it, move to the next park. Everything that they've done in King's Dominion in the last 3 seasons is exactly to the letter of the, itemized laundry list by an accountant. One to, apple to zit. They need to do everything that they did at King's Dominion. They first came in and they cleaned the park. They made it the cleanest park in the chain by far, which says a lot because I think Kings Island and Knott's Berry Farm, I think they do a great job of keeping a clean park. King's Dominion is at another level of cleanliness this year. Definitely the best operating season I've seen since I was a kid at this park. And that's exciting for me to see King's Dominion start to, move its way back up the list of desirable parks again. And the biggest change that they made is their VIP area. So no other park in the Cedar Fair / Six Flags chain got it right like King's Dominion got it right. Their VIP lounge is an entire enclosed air-conditioned building with 30 flat screen TVs, probably 16 indoor, 14 outside, fireplaces outside for each individual television station. It is beautiful for a Cedar Fair park, or now a Six Flags park. It is a very pleasant place to be if you are a premium paying guest of that chain, to be able to get out of the heat and be able to have drinks that you don't have to pay for, snacks that you don't have to pay for, a nice comfortable cushion, a few hundred channels worth of cable, and air conditioning. That is not a bad way to say thank you to your guests. And when you go to other parks in the chain, a lot of it is outdoor seating. The other thing that King's Dominion did is they improved their culinary experience tenfold. It is much more in line with the Kings Island and Cedar Point culinary experience now than it is with the, not to knock you, Dorney Park, but the Dorney Park dining experience, which is 3 chicken places with 3 different names that all sell the same chicken, and then 3 burger places with 3 different names that all sell the same burger.
Busch Gardens.
Yeah, well, okay, Busch Gardens isn't that much better, but at least Busch Gardens has good churros. That's
True.
another one of those things that that tips the scale a little bit. But finally, King's Dominion invested money in training for operations to keep lines low, and they invested in rides for the park, and good rides at that matter. They have 2 of the best coasters in the world, and assuredly one of the maybe top 5 1-2 punches in the world for any coaster enthusiast in Pantherian and Twisted Timbers. And now we're going to get to experience for 2025 the all-new Raptor winged launch coaster from B&M. So I think King's Dominion at 10 is a really, really strong contender. Juice, I know you said you have not been there, but is that one of those parks that has ever been on your radar to make it to?
Yes, actually, that is another park that I've considered going to this coming year. I've like, especially because I've heard a lot of really good things about it, and it's very easy to get to. I mean, you go on the highway,
It
it's
is.
where you turn off the highway, you're at the park. So it's very
Yeah,
definitely very
that
high on my list.
centralized location right off of I-95 is incredibly convenient for people really all over the country. From us coming from the north up in Pennsylvania, it's about a 4-hour drive for me, 4.5-hour drive. And for you guys, I mean, even from the Tampa region, you guys are probably only what, about 8 hours, 7, 8 hours?
Uh, no,
I'd
I think
have
it
to
is a
look
little
at
bit.
that.
I think it is a little bit longer. I can look because I know I want to say
Little
that.
longer.
Yeah, I want to say that it was closer to 8 when I drove past the park, going up to Pennsylvania from Savannah, Georgia. So
Yeah, it's
let's
like
see.
6 to get out of Florida and into Georgia. So
Yeah.
yeah, I do know it's close
Yeah, I
to
guess
Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, though. Like only like what, an hour from Busch Gardens, Williamsburg.
Yeah, it's about 12
almost
hours.
exactly 1 hour.
Yeah, because I remember doing that as a kid. We'd do BG Dubs, and then we'd go to King's Dominion right
Yeah,
after.
it is
Stay.
rare that I do one without doing the other in the same trip
Right.
now, just because they are so close. But, having passes for each for the last several years, we don't feel like we have to, be at each park for 10 hours. So even going on a weekday where we can ride everything that we want 3 or 4 times and be at each park for 3 hours each, that's a pretty great full action-packed day. And now you have been to King's Dominion. Have you been recently, Jake?
No. I would say the last time, I don't remember the last time that I went, because we did a trip to DC and then we went to BG Dubs and then we went to King's Dominion. I don't recall the last time that was.
Yeah.
So
If you're going to make a trip up to be able to ride Rapterra, which at some point in the next year or two, I'm sure you will, definitely keep this episode in the back of your mind. That, man, he was right. This is really nice. Now, I'm going to give you a little spoiler here. Cedar Point is not on this list. Six Flags Magic Mountain is not on this list. And,
that would make sense.
the reason being is they don't provide a great overall experience. If this were a ranking list of which parks have the best roller coaster lineup, I mean, it would be ludicrous to leave Cedar Point off this list. But when you do the things that Cedar Point does, I mean, you can't expect to be on this list. Some of their crowd management strategies are specifically designed for you to spend more money. And I mean, I don't know. It is one of those parks that's incredibly frustrating because they used to be so great. And even though they are putting money and investing in improving the ride lineup, what they really need to do is maybe invest in improving the management at the park. At the park level, I am a huge fan of holding people accountable for the results that you're able to provide. And at the end of the day, the results at Cedar Point just haven't been good enough for the last 5 or 6 years. When you want to be the preeminent park in a chain, you need to act like it and you need to deliver on it. And even just looking at ROI for dollars spent versus dollars gained, Cedar Point is not very high on that list in the last 6 operating seasons, if you add them all up. So I think there are a lot of improvements that need to be made there holistically to things other than the ride lineup, because, again, I think anybody would agree that it's awesome. But the number 9 park on the list is Holiday World, Jake. I have Holiday World up at number 9. What's your thought on me having Holiday World ranked so highly?
Great park. I mean, yeah, it's got, one of the only B&M launched wings at the moment. I think there might
At
be
the
one
moment,
in China. But who knows if that's actually B&M, right? But you never know where they get their coasters from. But Holiday World is a fantastic park. Obviously, a lot of some of the best wooden coasters in the world,
Mhm.
and also, Holiday World's fantastic. I haven't been on Good Gravy, but it's an Intamin or a
You know what?
Vekoma family coast, a boomerang. So
I haven't
but
either. I was supposed to make it to Hollywood Nights this year, and I did not get to use my tickets,
yeah,
which was a big bummer because it kind of happened at the last minute that I was unable to. So no Good Gravy yet for me either. But like you said, I mean, I have been on the Kings Island new Snoopy one, which is pretty similar, not the exact same layout, but it's the
kind of the
same
same.
ride model.
Any park with like a Halloween section obviously gets brownie points from me
No
immediately.
doubt. No doubt.
So, but I think, Holiday World, I know we talked like last time we were talking about this, but Holiday World is like 1 or 2 more steel coasters from really being contender for like one of my favorite parks for sure. So
The first time that I had been there, it really surprised me. I was not expecting me to like it that much, and I found myself leaving at the end of that first visit saying, "This may be one of the best parks in the country." And I still stand by it that several years later, I truly believe that the things that they're able to offer to their guests, it really elevates it. Some of the extra credit things that this park gets is number 1, free drinks. Number 2, free sunscreen and lotion. That's unheard of. That's unheard of. If that doesn't scream, we care about your experience and you coming back next year more than making an extra $15 off of you this year, I don't know what else does. And I think that a lot of other chains would probably be served well if they would kind of take a little bit of a lesson from the Cook family and how they perceive a return on investment, because they just do it better than most people. And they make great additions in their park. If you notice, there's not much fluff in that park. It's just well done, first class from start to finish. And they have a great dog kennel. If anybody is a pet lover and they like to bring their pets with them on vacation, they have a really great dog kennel. Very easy to work with, very easy pick up and drop off points right at the front gate, right next to the parking lot. Really just a great overall experience. And Coaster Juice, let me tell you, man, you got to put Holiday World on your list. It's one of those parks that everyone should experience at least once.
yes,
Even if it's just to get the void craft.
right.
That is one of those rides that I think every enthusiast should at least get to ride once. Not a park that you and you may not have to do. So I have BGT as the 8th best park in America. Do you guys think that I have it too low, or do you think I have it too high?
Here we go.
Oh,
James, you want to go first?
sure, why not? Um, hmm. While I love the park and would love to say, it deserves where you have it or better, I think it is telling of the way people perceive things. I feel like you should switch Busch Gardens and King's Dominion. Honestly, like a lot of things that King's Dominion has been doing recently that have are people are talking about and really liking. I think that Busch Gardens could really use that. Like you mentioned the return on like the ROI stuff. Um, I've noticed that there's like this idea in some parks that making the park nice, as in better landscaping, um, getting rid of like foliage that's just grown that's not really supposed to be there, keeping rides maintained and looking fresh and new, so that even like just keeping them painted, good food options, like keeping the trash off the ground, things like that. I've noticed that there's this perception that parks have for some reason, or the people who are in charge of the parks, that stuff you that wastes money, and that it there's this idea of, oh, that costs money, and I think that actually is losing them guests, which is sad because I love Busch Gardens and I think it's a fantastic park, but I don't know. So but Jake, you can say what you think about that.
Yeah, I think Busch Gardens' big problem is, and again, okay, so to preface all of this, James and I have, I call it home park syndrome when it comes to Busch Gardens. So like they could change out, the palm trees up front, and we would notice, and we would probably say like, oh, that's a good choice or whatever, and we'd do like 3 posts on X about it, you know. So we notice like every time they like even test new colors on one strip of iron gauzy. So like, we notice things like that. And that happens with everyone's home park, by the way.
Yeah.
So when I say all this, a lot of it is like, we know every nook and cranny of Busch Gardens, and we've grew up with that park. So all that to say, I think Busch Gardens really, we grew up with the Anheuser-Busch days, when the park was very cohesive, very connected. This idea of wildlife and wild rides dwelling together, the coasters making sense within that context of like personifying animal behaviors, and also the shows all educating you about animals, the theme being really connected to Africa, specifically the Tampa version, which is, a pretty, diverse continent, and a really cool place to explore for a theme for a park. To see all of that kind of be stripped away, just to elevate, and I know this might be weird for me saying, but just to elevate, this thrill capital idea. I don't know who is asking for like the thrill capital of Florida. Certainly we're not. In Florida, where guest experience matters the most and everything you do is compared to Disney or Universal, nobody's looking for like, a strata coaster at Busch Gardens Tampa. I think they have kind of an identity issue, and they need to rekindle that and kind of find that. And really, they need to stop looking towards Magic Mountain and start looking more towards Dollywood, in my opinion. Stop, trying to be the Magic Kingdom Magic Mountain of Florida. The ones that's not on your list, by the way, and start looking more towards, the Dollywood of Florida, if you will. Because at the same time, it's not there yet. It's not as bad as like some of the Six Flags parks, they do some things
Right.
really, really well. Iron Gwazi is like my number one coaster of all time. So, and they still have, the Montu is still one of the greatest inverts. They still have really good entertainment. One of the biggest zoos in the United States, by the way. So they have a lot of things going for them. It's just going to take somebody to come in, and we could talk for an hour about this, but somebody to come in and really understand what the park was and kind of bring it back to that in the most cost efficient way. Because with Anheuser-Busch, they were, adding in a lot to make that happen. And it's a lot tougher in a post-COVID world. But I think there is an opportunity to split the difference and improve upon some of the things. But it's very interesting that it's in your list, though. And I'm actually really curious what you think of it, to be totally honest, because we're like biased as heck when it comes to like Busch Gardens and Universal. So I'm kind of really interested in why you have it on your list.
Just as a generality, I feel like United Parks does the theme park game a little better than everyone else. Not a ton better, but a little better. And when you do it a little better, but you also start off with a naturally more beautiful property from the rip, it's like, man, you got to really do some dumb stuff to mess that up. And I don't feel like they have yet. But I feel like if they continue to go down the road of preserving the thrill capital opposed to preserving the nature, I think that then they're going to run the risk of their park not starting off being naturally more beautiful than everywhere else. And then the playing field starts to get leveled a little bit more when you lose that natural advantage. So yeah, I mean, it is a great park, but I think it has, out of any park that is on this list, it has by far the worst customer service and the worst customer experience of any park in the United Parks chain and any park that's in this top 10. But they do have a great ride lineup. It is beautiful. I love the animal exhibits. I think there are so many great things that are going for it. But arguably, maybe this could go back to 10 and everybody else bump up one. I wouldn't be against that, but I think it does fall somewhere between like the 8, 9, 10 area. But moving on, number 7, the sweetest place on earth. It brings us back to my home state of Pennsylvania for number 7, Hershey Park. This one would have the second to worst customer service experience of any of the parks that are on this list, because they don't do a good job of cycling people through the line at the guest services desk. It's opening day at Hershey is worse than tax deadline day at the IRS. It is unbelievably poorly managed. They like have lines that are running through one another, and it literally is a train wreck. So typically I will avoid Hershey for the first several weeks, and I will go out and pick my season pass up late, just to avoid all of the crap that they have created the first few weeks of the season. But beyond that, that is really my only negative to this park. They have arguably one of, if not the best roller coaster collections in the entire country. They have really solid operations on their major coasters, although some of the non-major coasters like Comet and Great Bear at this point, they probably could use a little better operations on. The food overall is very good. the location in the country. It's a very beautiful part of Pennsylvania. And the overall chocolate theming and candy theming is, I don't know, I actually kind of think that it's kind of cute. I think that every kid eats candy. Not every kid watches Disney movies. Every kid eats candy. I've never met one that doesn't. And because of that, I think that it actually is able to cross some boundaries for people, which is why it's become such a popular destination. And even though nobody else is reporting it and nobody else will get on board, I am standing by my reporting 3 months ago that Hershey Park broke 4 million guests this last operating season. I've seen nobody else say it. I heard it from somebody that I believe from within the corporation, and I don't believe that they would tell me a blatant lie. So if it's not at 4 million, it's going to be damn close. We're significantly higher than like the 3.4 million record that they had coming into last season. So Hershey definitely on the way up. I think they also have the best CEO out of any park on this chain by a considerable margin. John Lawn is an industry ace, and it is absolutely not coincidental that Hershey has had a meteoric rise in people's top park list over the last 10 or 15 years of him being with that company. John Lawn, really smart guy. Really smart guy. Jake, your thoughts on Hershey as a whole?
I think Hershey Park has the largest collection of underrated coasters in the United States.
Yeah,
Storm Runner, for instance, is a fantastic intimate accelerator, and a lot of people forget about it. But there is no other like Storm Runner. Like, it's got some very unique elements to it. Wildcat's Revenge, I don't see in a whole lot of people's like RMC lists. The Zadras, Iron Gwazis, Steel Vengeance, like those get a lot of attention. But Wildcat's Revenge should be in a lot of people's lists. To mention, they have one of the, you mentioned it, one of the oldest operating, Comet is a 100-year-old just about coaster, and one of the original wooden coasters like around. And to have, I appreciate, back to our theme park versus amusement park conversation, I really appreciate when parks care about their legacy and legacy coasters, and to be able to have that kind of thing still available at Hershey Park, I think is really cool. Big Bear is perhaps, I just call it Big Bear. It's perhaps one of the more unique B&M inverted coasters around. I don't know if it's obviously not my favorite, but it is super unique, and very, very underrated. It's not in a lot of people's lists either.
Agreed.
And I don't know why. Obviously, you have Talon, you've got, even like Silver Bullet, and then Montu, of course, Alpengeist. Those get
Banshee.
Yeah. But I think Hershey Park, super underrated. I love Candymodium too. I know a lot of people poo-poo on that one. I think Hershey Park has a really underrated lineup for sure. And when I think of Hershey Park, I do think of a really a good family park for sure, and kind of what a good experience. They could do a little bit more with like theming, but
a lot of their major rides are family friendly for the height requirements, which is a really big deal in that area. Moving on to number 6 is going to be Kings Island, the other Kings Park, and the last Six Flags Park on this list. And for a lot of the same reasons that Kings Dominion has, realistically, Kings Dominion became successful following the Kings Island recipe. So I'm just paying homage at this point to the OG by placing Kings Island all the way up at 6. I do want to make sure that I say, though, that last year, Kings Island ranked 2nd on this list. So they have dropped 4 spots for some staffing and staff-related issues, just not having things open. If you're going to say that a drink stand or a restaurant isn't open because of staffing issues, then you have to be able to say that because you can't hire staff because nobody wants the job. You can't say that it's staffing issues because you don't want to pay the people that you already have employed at the park to go and work the stand. That is not a staffing issue. That is a you lying to the public issue. That's a you not wanting to pay employees to do their job issue. So, it doesn't make any sense to me for them to keep investing money into drink stands and drink stands and drink stands when they don't keep the damn drink stands open that they already have. So, that's something that'll never make sense to me about that park in particular, but their operations are the best in the chain. I think they have the best and most well-rounded ride lineup of any park in the chain, including Cedar Point, including Magic Mountain. I think all encompassing full kids section, family rides, the whole nine. I think they have the best, most well-rounded. And I'm going to jump straight into number 5 just because I don't want episode 4 to be 6 hours long. Number 5 being Dollywood. It's one that we've already talked about here today. I think Dollywood is one of the gems of the American theme park and amusement park industry. It is slowly but surely emerging as one of the gold standards of the industry. And I think it's pretty fascinating of how they've got there and how quickly they've been able to get there. Especially considering that, 30 years ago, there really weren't that many rides at Dollywood. What they have been able to do, it has been in very short order. My one big concern for this park is, are they going to be willing to do it all over again? And what I mean when I say that is when you have parks that go through meteoric rises like this, like, say, a Hershey Park did twice now, through 2 different Renaissance. Hershey has always went back and reinvested to keep the rides in tip-top shape. They've always reinvested to keep everything running perfectly. It is the reason that they're so successful. I am starting to see Dollywood not necessarily share the same stomach for that, just by how Mystery Mine operates and some of the issues that ride has had. And now they invest in Thunderhead for the retracking. They invest in Lightning Rod, obviously, but not necessarily everything. And Hershey on one side is redoing a boomerang to make it the best boomerang people have ever ridden. They have a Gerstlauer Eurofighter, I think the first in America, and God, is that thing rough and torturous depending on where you sit. Yeah, it is. It's problematic, and I don't know. To me, that is something that I would like to see Dollywood focus on moving forward, is taking the mids and the average rides and the rides that have gotten too rough and investing in those next before you go put a $50 million Giga Coaster in. That would just be my preference. Juice, your thought on Dollywood? I know you're talking about making it a new park this year. What are you most excited to ride there?
Yeah, well, I think most excited to ride, I would have to say probably Thunderhead, simply because Lightning Rod is still being Lightning Rod. Um, but I do agree with what some of the things you were saying, and I feel like with what the success they've seen with Thunderhead, I feel like they will start going that route. Um, they seem to still have that family structure of leadership in place, like the old Anheuser-Busch days for United Parks. So I think that there's going to be some success there that comes with that because of an extra level of care. So that's another thing that makes me excited to go there is like growing up going to Busch Gardens with a family leading it. I know that there's going to be a lot of care for Dollywood, so I'm interested to see uh, how deep that goes, as it were, and um, I'm interested to go to that quality of park, uh, especially with the rides. I
It
mean,
it
how can you
is,
not want to ride those?
yeah. Thunderhead is, um, it is so good. You are gonna absolutely love that. Uh, I'm excited for you. Thunderhead is so good that I feel like people that I don't like should get to ride Thunderhead. It's like, yeah, I know that I don't like you as a person, but like, no, seriously, you gotta ride that shit. It's so good. Um, yeah, Thunderhead, man. Oh man, that is good, Woody. Jake, I'm gonna move on to number 4 because this is going to be a little more up your alley, I think, than Dollywood as far as being opinionated. Number 4, SeaWorld Orlando, all the way up at number 4. And man, people that don't like United Parks are going to be really pissed off at me right now for actually
I'll
giving
take
their upper management and Mr. Swanson a little bit of credit that he so rightfully deserves. And for any United Park hater out there watching, um, yeah, you're wrong. You're just wrong. Did they do everything right? No, they don't. But show me any of these park chains that do. First off, second off, their market share has went up by 22% since he has taken his title. That's called winning, kids. Again, I live in the world of math, and winning is winning. When you take a 22% market share away from any industry, when you were only taking like 15.8 previous, that is a big deal. You're talking a 7 or 8% increase in a very short window of time. That means that they have done an exceptional job at the very first section of criteria, which is providing a great guest experience for the value, giving families a good value for the dollars that they're spending to get into your park. And SeaWorld is really a great testament to that. The animal shows that they provide to the guests there at no additional charge. Um, you just can't get that anywhere else. Anywhere else. Not even at our beloved Universal. You don't get that type of aquatic show anywhere in the world for free. Um, as a matter of fact, I would even dare to say you would spend more money taking a family of 4 to the Pittsburgh Aquarium for the day than you would taking a family of 4 to SeaWorld Orlando for the day if you were shopping ahead for a good deal on tickets. If you were going to budget purchase them in advance somehow, or were smart enough to, buy one season pass and get the other passes free, or however you decide to game the system. I think they are just doing the basics better than everyone else. The park is well staffed. It's clean. They have a great ride lineup. The food isn't offensive. It's not great, but it's not offensive. Um, of course, there are small changes that I would make, but for the most part, I would rather spend a day at SeaWorld Orlando than just about any other park in America. Sans maybe just 3. So we're going to talk about those 3 here in a minute because something tells me you probably know what they are. And first, your thought on SeaWorld Orlando. Both of your guys' thoughts on SeaWorld Orlando. I know that is technically your other home park.
I think a lot of you need to put all the complaints about SeaWorld Orlando in context. A lot of them come from people that have annual passes and go all the time, which is very funny to me. Same with Busch Gardens and Disney and somewhat Universal. All of us kind of go all to these parks all the time. So besides that, I think the vast majority of enthusiasts that live out of state that I've heard are like, guys, I mean, I loved Mako, I loved Pipeline, I loved Manta. What are you guys complaining about? And I'm like, I know, me too. So like, I think it's very fun for some people to like dunk on SeaWorld because of the, a few years ago, they discovered that they had whales and their tanks aren't the size of the Pacific Ocean. And it was a riveting story. But I think,
and really quickly, Jake, I want to touch really quickly. I want to touch on this Blackfish thing really quickly. Yes, that's a terrible story. I agree with what you said, but it sounds like you're kind of minimizing it, and for good reason. I thank you for minimizing that because you know what? Today's SeaWorld teaches kids more about conservation and about wildlife today than they ever have before. And to still hit that chain with any type of negative connotation at all about what they're doing in regards to animal conservation and animal safety is just, I mean, it makes no sense to me because they are so far beyond that at this point that it's more about the education and the conservation than it is making money off of the animals, because if it weren't, then they wouldn't have agreed to stop the breeding programs. They wouldn't have agreed to stop the capture programs. They wouldn't have. This is about them making a transition to a wildlife education park like the Busch Gardens parks, and about becoming more ride oriented. And to still hear people complain about that, it really drives me wild because they are currently doing good for wildlife. No more bad. So go ahead. I had to get that off my chest because as an animal lover myself and somebody that takes animals very seriously and their safety very seriously, I hate hearing people say stupid things like that. That they're terrible people because they want to teach your kid about dolphins. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there was obviously an accident that happened with Shamu and it was actually Tillicum. And obviously an accident in an amusement park or a theme park is a bad thing. And we certainly don't want that to happen. But there's been accidents on coasters before. So should we remove all the coasters? I mean,
Correct.
So to have something exploit that in that way, obviously they don't capture whales anymore. Obviously all the whales there are domesticated. They've been there their entire lives. All of their shows are based on natural animal behaviors. You're never going to see a behavior that's not something that a whale doesn't do. So yeah, I'm kind of with you. But besides the animals, they have a fantastic animal collection, but I do think the investments that they have put into the park in the past, since 2019, I would say, just with Pipeline, and even going back to like Mako, and this new flying theater that they're putting in, give it 8 years, and I think SeaWorld Orlando may be very close to, depending on Epic Universe, may be very close to one of the top theme parks in the state. I think if they could add just a couple more coasters that really outdo
Would
them,
not surprise.
what they have, I do think it could be one of the top coasters, one of the top parks in the United States, coaster park wise. If they continue upgrading like food options and things like that. SeaWorld also has a really fantastic family area that a lot of people don't talk about. The Sesame Street area is really, really
absolutely
well done.
Sesame Place. Yep.
Yeah. So
Yeah, absolutely. The Sesame Place Park in Pennsylvania is phenomenal.
Yeah,
for a kids park, it's
Yeah.
really, really good.
I know
Now,
James
moving
goes
on
there
to
too.
number 3 on this list. Number 3 on this list, Juice. I don't know if you've been to this one, Universal Orlando. Have you been to any of those Universal parks?
yes.
Studios, Violence. I'm joking,
Never heard of
obviously.
it.
So this being number 3, I put the Orlando campus as one single place. I don't, just because they are ticketed as different parks, I do not count them as different parks. Let's be honest with one
Fighting
another.
words.
They're not different parks. I mean, Universal, call it what they want to call it, but they're not different parks. It's the same park with 3 different reasons to make you spend money. Now, would I typically be pissed off about that because it's very anti-American? Oh yeah, I typically would be, but not when you do it as good as Universal does. Bend me over, daddy, spank my ass, call me Charlie. Just take the money out of my wallet yourself. I don't care. If you're going to deliver the type of quality like Universal delivered, charge me whatever the hell you want. I could care less. Velocicoaster, phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Even Jake's most hated coaster, Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket, really, it's not that bad. At the end of the day, Universal is awesome. And the only thing that's down at number 3 on this list for me is the affordability clause. You don't have a very reasonable way for a family of 4 to buy season passes unless mom or dad has a really damn good job. And as long as you're willing to sacrifice going anywhere else ever for the rest of the year, because it is pricey. But dollar for dollar, day for day, experience for experience, I think Universal stacks up with anybody else in the country, any other park, even parks that have 2 and 3 times the number of roller coasters that they do, because at the end of the day, quality always beats quantity, at least in my opinion. Your guys' thoughts about me having it at number 3?
I'd certainly agree with that. I think I was actually just there Sunday, so I certainly think that it is worth every dollar you spend, despite the fact that it is, in my opinion, a little expensive. But it's definitely not Disney level expensive.
A little.
Yeah,
A little?
we're comparing it
Listen.
to Disney here, though. So
But that's like saying, okay, I mean, crack cocaine is pretty safe comparatively to heroin. It's still crack cocaine. I mean, at the end of the day, guys, expensive is expensive. And I mean, like I'm bashing the new Six Flags over the last, several months because of just really bad decisions. But I mean, they do offer a good value on their day tickets to go to parks. And if you take, I have a hard time going to bed at night thinking that Universal Studios is 8 times better than Kings Island, because it isn't. I mean, it's just not. Not in any world is it 8 times better than. Is it twice as good as Kings Island? Probably not. Is it close to being twice as good as Kingdom? Maybe. The theming is really phenomenal. It's outstanding, but it's just not 8 times better. So, like when I remember that not everybody, like I'm assuming that we're all relatively fortunate that, we get to go to these places and we can afford to do these things and we can afford to do a little bit of traveling and, have a nice meal when we want. And a lot of people that have got into this hobby fortunately can, but some people that are in the hobby, they can't, So I always try to keep that in mind that I want these experiences to be attainable for all children because that's what this is, it's what it's like, it's what it's designed for. To help get the next generation into this kind of stuff, to make it to give us an industry to look forward to, and you got to have the youth. And if you price all the kids out, I don't know. Then it's just a whole bunch of entitled adults like just getting smashed at the parks drinking. And I don't know. That's not my cup of tea. I typically start leaving the park when I see adults running around drunk. It's one of the least appealing things at an amusement park to me ever is seeing grown adults that can't handle their booze. It's like, really? I know you're acting like a child, but you needed to come in public and ruin everyone else's good time because you're a child. Me personally, I wouldn't sell liquor in parks, period. I think there's no place for it. If you want to go to the bar, go to the bar. Go to the bar, then go to the park. Do whatever you want. Sneak a flask in. But don't make it so easy for everybody to be hammered because most people are not a very good judge of their own ability to drink alcohol. If we were, we wouldn't have, entire government buildings built off of DUI money. Just my own 2 cents on the booze thing, but God, does that drive me up the wall. Watching 45-year-old drunk men rub up against my teenage daughters in line because they think it's funny, I can't tell you how many times grown adult men have almost got themselves beat up by drinking too much and doing inappropriate things around my kids. It's just a very fine line between what's right and what's wrong when you're in public. And we've made it so acceptable. It just that's one of those things that if I could change anything about the industry, it would be I would take liquor out of the parks. Maybe not beer, but I would take liquor out of the parks. You want to have a beer? It's Oktoberfest. Awesome. Have 5 of them. If you're an adult, you can probably handle it. But man, these people like walking around with these liquor slushies where it's like, grain alcohol and vodka with Kool-Aid and it's frozen. It's like, Jesus, who buys that stuff? But number 2, Jake, Silver Dollar City. And Silver Dollar City, to me, it was the number 1 park on my list for last year. So it did drop a spot as well. Silver Dollar City to me is, well, obviously it's my second favorite place to be in America. But for so many more reasons than just roller coasters. The overall theming, the immersion that you feel from the time you park your car at Silver Dollar City is even significantly higher than that of Dollywood because it's not really, Dollywood isn't themed necessarily like a Silver Dollar City is, where all of the employees are all playing a part, as well. Silver Dollar City is kind of like what Knott's Berry Farms wanted to be. And I say that cautiously because I know a lot of people love Knott's and they think that it is like the gold standard for themed park. But those people probably just haven't been to Silver Dollar City. And I think that really is the difference between the people that love Knott's and the people that love Silver Dollar City. Typically, the people that talk about knots and only talk about knots and never mention Silver Dollar City is because they haven't been there. Because anyone that has been, it's always the same story. Man, this is the best park in the country. Man, this is the best park in the country. And after 4 or 5 years of having a season pass year, and we do on average 4 to 6 trips to Silver Dollar City a year. I love that park, and I actually will be there in like 10 more days again for the Christmas season. So it's one of those places that just never, ever, ever gets old. The rides never get old. The theming never gets old. The food is awesome. And it's a part of the country that's absolutely beautiful. Jake, I know you and I have spoke before. You are a Silver Dollar City fan. Excuse me, Juice. I know you. This is one of the places that you have not got a chance to go to. This is another one of those Dollywood ones that I would definitely put on the list, put on the Herschend hit list, if you will. That would be H to the second power, Herschend hit list. Let's see what I did there. And finally, number 1, Busch Gardens, Williamsburg.
Oh,
it moved up from number 3 last year to being my number 1 park in America. And I think this is a great case study for other park management teams. Everyone bitched about the theming for Pantheon. So where did we run and spend our money at Busch Gardens Williamsburg? To go and theme Pantheon? No, on park improvements and to make a guest experience better, and to redo the bridge and the walkway up from the premium parking lot, and to install 2 new restaurants, and to remodel another one, and to improve the food vendors that are down by Griffin, and to repaint all of the facades in Europe and in Ireland. And it just keeps going on and on and on and on. And, it's been a couple years. Would I love to have a couple Marvel statues in Pantheon? Sure, I would. It'd be pretty cool. And I think eventually they will. But Busch Gardens Williamsburg did such a great job in the last few years of adding the correct rides and making sure that all of the small things were going to be perfect for the guest. They even opened up 2 extra counters at the guest services desk. Busch Gardens Tampa, take note. Where they're opening more, you're closing more. You're going the wrong way. They're going the right way. So another thing Busch Gardens Tampa might want to consider. When I go and I use my pass at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, when I walk into the park for that night, I am there until they close the park. Doesn't matter if there is a separately ticketed event or not. I am a platinum pass holder. I am there until I leave. It's just the way it goes. That's what our small print says. But somewhere a couple years ago, Busch Gardens Tampa thought that they could get away with screwing the season pass holders with this separately ticketed event garbage, to which I asked their customer service manager to show me in writing where it says they are entitled to separately ticketed events if their website advertises the park to be open until 8 p.m. You can't ask me to leave at 5 if your website says that the park is open until 8, because my pass says I am entitled to be here until the park is closed for the day. So we had a nice little back and forth, and they could never end up documenting anything for me. This is a huge issue that I have with the Tampa Bay location and the customer service and the money grabbing. The separately ticketed event stuff, it started to spread now. We now had the roller coaster nights at SeaWorld Orlando, the coasters at night, whatever the hell they were advertising it as. That is a separately ticketed event. Then SeaWorld San Diego just started doing it for this holiday season. I had even heard a rumor that they were charging people for pictures with Santa Claus, which is a little bit crazy. So I
We
think
got that
that
one
they need to,
fixed.
yeah, I think they need to simmer down a little bit on this extra ticketed event, because I have no problem if you just want to make my season pass more. That's fine. You want to increase it by $20 on an annual level, or an extra $30? That's fine. I got no problem paying a small incremental increase if you keep delivering the quality. But the only park that keeps delivering the quality in the chain, to me, every time, 100 times out of 100, without fail, Busch Gardens Williamsburg. It's the cleanest park in the country. It's the prettiest park in the country. It has some of the best shading of any park in the country, which is a huge deal in the summertime. The food is great. There is not one bad thing. I think that they may have one of the best and most well-rounded ride lineups in the country, if not the world. There is not one thing that they don't do well. They may not do everything at an expert level, but they don't do anything poorly. And I think in today's day and age, that has to count for more than being excellent at just one thing. Jack of all trades and the master of none is always better than not many skills, except for one. So it's, I think dollar for dollar, it is the best park in America. And I'm not so sure that it's really even that close between the top 5 and the bottom 5. I think that the top 5 of Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, Silver Dollar City, Universal Campus, Orlando, SeaWorld Orlando, and Dollywood, I think that top 5 is leaps and bounds above the numbers 6 through 10, which would be the Kings Island, Hershey, Busch Gardens, Tampa, Holiday World, and Kings Dominion. So, what are your guys' final thoughts on that top 10? Do you have any major disagreements, or do you think that that I'm overvaluing or undervaluing any of these parks particularly?
Yeah, I'd say Busch Gardens Williamsburg again. There's a lot of that was Loch Ness Monster was my first coaster, so obviously I'm very partial to the nostalgia factor. But that also comes with they used to have Dark Castle, and they haven't been running the effects on Escape from Pompeii and stuff like that. So I think we notice a lot of small things with Busch Gardens Williamsburg, but when you just did, when you point out dang, they actually do have a really good lineup. There's no filler at maybe there's Skyrocket too, which how I feel about those. But there's no real you're not gonna find an Invertigo at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. Right. Everything is very intentional, and despite its past, I don't think it's struggling to find itself as much as maybe some of the other United parks are in a post-COVID and post-documentary era. So I would argue, yeah, it is a really good park, and it's definitely one of my tops as well. I'm still an Islands of Adventure guy, so which I do consider a separate park, by the way. But I think Busch Gardens Williamsburg definitely has, I no complaints here. I mean, I loved what they did with Loch Ness Monster. To me, that shows a lot. That shows a lot about how the park's management feels and is, at how they took an old Aero coaster that is pretty legendary, and instead of saying, well, let's rip this out and put in whatever, they said, no, let's upgrade this because it's a historic coaster, and let's not only upgrade it, but let's enhance it with some theming and some new things and some Easter eggs to some old rides.
Yep.
And now what they're doing with Wolf Rising, the big bad wolf, Wolf's whatever, Wolfenhagen. Yeah, Wolfenhagen. They're adding
yeah.
like theming to that, sound effects. So I think, yeah, like they care for their legacy in a way that I'd love to see like our beloved Busch Gardens Tampa also do, because there's lots of lore there as well. But you know, I just really like Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and I do think I don't argue with anybody that puts that at the top of their list.
Now,
for sure.
I will say that next year is really going to be the test. Next year is going to be the test because we're going to learn more about the Silver Dollar City expansion. So we know that is going to be intensely fighting for this top spot for me for the next few years. And you have Busch Gardens Williamsburg, which, I mean, is rumored that this big bad wolf is just the start of the next chapter of this park. And of course,
sure.
I don't think I have to tell you guys, there's a little park called Epic Universe that's open down the street from the number 3 park on this list. So I am super excited to have this same conversation 365 days from today, because there's a good chance I am going to be a really excited Tuesday.
I think you will be.
Juice, thank you for hopping on today, man. It has been very fun. Hopefully you'll be up to maybe do a few more roundtable discussions in the future whenever we try to get a few different content creators on all at the same time. And Jake, final thoughts for the episode.
If Kumba goes, someone dies.
Agreed.
You know what? I can get on board with that. I do love me some Kumba. No doubt. No doubt. Hey, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us tonight and sticking on this extended conversation about my top 10 parks in America for 2024. And thanks for, watching my dog have to interrupt the podcast and go pee. Speaking of which, I think he's still out there. I should probably go get him.
Yeah.
Till next time, guys. We'll see you out there.